Hello and welcome to Headmaster Assembly, a much shorter assembly today, more of notices really, and just a few things that we want to cover quickly before we move on to look at next week. The first thing I want to say is very well done. You've completed your final full week of the term with just a 4-day week of lessons next week, Monday through to Thursday, and then some celebrations on Friday morning before we all break up for the summer. And I must say that your grades and your reports that I've read over the course of the last couple of weeks are looking excellent. Some real encouraging messages coming through from those, and I hope that you'll enjoy those and take the time to read that work once that comes through in the next week, 10 days or so. I also want to thank you for finishing well. We spoke about this last week and that sense of wanting to complete the term in the right way, and you have done that absolutely superbly. So very well done indeed. Well done for working hard, and I know that a number of you have had to overcome technology issues and time zone issues, amongst other things, managing family lives as well. So very well done to all of you. So 4 things I want to look at for you to think about for next week. The first of these is to complete work. So write a list over the course of the weekend and then tick it off one at a time of the things that you need to finish. It's really important to get that sense of completion at the end of a busy term. So write that list over the weekend and then tick them off one at a time. That sense of satisfaction can be really useful for us. The second thing you need to do is to plan your summer. So talking to your teachers, asking them the question, what do I need to do to be ready for September? Now, in the many for you, it might just be there's nothing for you to do. Maybe you're starting brand new courses. So for those of you who are in the 5th form, that list may be very different, particularly as you've done some of that work already. But you must ask that question, what do I need to do to be ready for September? The third thing you need to do is to think about your belongings that are here in school. If you are too far away to be able to come in and collect those belongings, it's just impractical for you for whatever reason, you must have made contact with your housemasters, housemistresses to arrange for what is going to be happening to those belongings. If you are close enough to come into school to collect or to drop off, please do that over the course of the next week. Mrs. Evans is in the office every day. Liaise with your housemaster, housemistress, tell them what you need to be doing, and they will help guide you through that particular process. But we really want to gather back in as much as possible, things like CCF kit, things like textbooks that need to be returned at the end of courses. Anything you can do on that front at this stage is going to be really useful and save us a big job for September. So message number 1 on that, communicate with your housemaster, your housemistress, and work out how you're going to be collecting or looking after your belongings over the summer. The last thing I would like everybody to do is to say thank you. There is not a single person in our school who won't have somebody that they can write to thank. So that could be a housemaster, housemistress, tutor, teacher, matron, a member of the catering team, one of our front office staff, a games coach. The list goes on and on. But there must be somebody that you can think of that you need to write to. So if you're going to do that, you could write them a card and you could put that in the post and we can make sure that gets to them. If in doubt, just address it here at Dean Close School and we'll make sure it arrives with them in good time. You can of course send them an email directly. There are various ways of sending cards and gifts online if you feel that is appropriate. The most important thing I think is to hear a message of thanks. It's the words that really make the most difference. So please do think about that. So 4 things: complete your work, plan for the summer, think about collecting your belongings and what's going to happen with those, and fourthly, say thank you. And that is something for everybody pleased to be doing. Now next week we're going to be having a live assembly. Slightly nervous about how this is going to work, but we think it's going to come together really well. And there's lots of things in this assembly, which is going to be a bit of a combination of a prize giving service as well as a normal end of year assembly. This weekend we would have normally been having our commem, and in fact on Saturday that would have been our commemoration weekend. We're not going to try and recreate all of that because we want to park some of that until we can gather the upper 6th leavers all in one place as much as possible in September. We want to have that celebration. But we do want to acknowledge a lot of things that have happened over the course of this year. So that assembly is going to feature a number of things. There's going to be a very quick review of the year and the things we've achieved. There's going to be an interview with an Olympian who was due to be taking part in the Tokyo 2020 Games. And we want to talk to them a little bit about what has it actually been like to have that interrupted? Because I know that for a lot of you, this year has not planned out as you expected it to do. And therefore, how do you manage that interruption and how do you plan for the future? So there's going to be a fascinating interview with them. We're going to be giving prizes for academic and co-curricular awards for A-level, GCSE and also for Year 9. So look out for those. We won't be doing all of the prizes that we would normally do at Command, because as I said, we're going to keep some of those for when we can really gather together. So those contribution to school prizes, things like that, we're going to keep for that later event. But we will be announcing all the academic prizes and all the co-curricular prizes as part of that assembly on Friday. We're going to be thanking a number of staff who are leaving, and we have some colleagues who have worked at Dean Close for over 30 years who we're going to be saying goodbye and thank you to at that assembly in a more formal way. And that's going to be a great privilege for me to be a part of that. And then finally, this is going to conclude with, I'm hoping, an assembly which has been put together by the Upper Sixth as a bit of a leaving video. I have no idea what that's going to look like yet. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the head and the deputy heads of school are getting on with that project. So there's lots of things there, and it's going to happen at 12 o'clock, and it will be live. We will record it, so there will be a version, but the more people that we can gather together at that time for a 12 o'clock next Friday for a live assembly, end of year assembly, that will be a great way for us to finish. But let me just remind you about those 4 things for this week, please. Complete any work, write a list and tick it off. Plan your summer, ask your teacher the question, what do I need to do? Collect or arrange for your belongings to be taken care of, and also say thank you to somebody. Please maybe do that this weekend. Take the time out. Who can I write and say thank you to, and what words would be the most appropriate to use? I hope that everybody engages with that, and I will see you all for our end of year assembly next Friday at 12 o'clock. Have a really good weekend and a good last week.
Hello once again. This week I'm under the oak tree on Chapel Close lawn. I hope you've all had a really good week, and it's been really nice to have a few more pupils in school this week, bringing a little bit of life back into our buildings. Next Friday, the 3rd of July, the final day of term, there are 3 key events that you need to take note of. At 9 AM, Mr. Allen and Mr. Wilkes will be hosting a whole school online quiz where prizes will be awarded in various categories. At 10:30, each house will have a live final assembly of the term, and at 12 noon, we'll have a final Headmaster's assembly live, which will have a number of special features, so please could you ensure that you make note of those 3 particular events for next Friday. Earlier this term, the Product Design Technology Year 12s did an experiment to do everyday tasks while they were inhibited in some way to make them more empathetic with people who might struggle to do everyday tasks. The results were fantastic, and with some great video footage. Mrs. Davis especially liked Ben Maher's interpretation of making a cup of tea without the tea. Well done to Abby, Rachel and Ben in particular for their superb work. Many congratulations go to Ferapont Baranov in the 4th form for winning his first race of the new karting season in Lithuania. We wish him continued success in the various upcoming races. The Strava stats show the staff taking the lead once again in both the running and the cycling, but I wanted to give a shout out to Hannah and Billy, this week's newcomers to the top 20 and top 10 respectively. Well done to them. And once again, don't forget to log your activity so that your house parents are able to see what you have been doing. To finish this week, I have decided to leave you with this superb piece called The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe, put together by the 4th form drama pupils. Do also look out for this week's music concert, which we sent out on Thursday and which will also appear in the weekly mailing. I hope you all have a really good weekend.
Nervous. Very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why will you say that I'm mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and in earth. I heard many things in hell. How, then, am I mad? Hearken and observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
It is impossible to say how the first idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me, day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye, with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever.
Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work.
I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I'd made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed that no light shone out, and then I thrust my head in.
Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening, so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed.
Ha! Would a mad man have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh, so cautiously. Cautiously. For the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight, but I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye.
And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept.
Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moved more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my powers, my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door, little by little, and he not even the dream of my secret deeds and thoughts.
I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was as black as a pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed fastened through fear of robbers, and so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily.
I had my head in. I was about to open the lantern, when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quiet still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed, listening, just as I have done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall.
Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of pain or of grief, oh no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul, overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me.
I say, I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt, and I pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise, when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It's nothing but the wind in the chimney. It's only a mouse crossing the floor, or it's merely a cricket which had made a single chirp."
Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain. All in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim, and it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within that room.
When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from out the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it.
I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot.
And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of a drum stimulates the soldier into courage.
But even yet I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eve. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker, and louder every instant. The old man's terror must I am. And now, the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror.
Yet, for some minutes longer I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbour. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once. Once only.
In an instant I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead.
I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. The eye would trouble me no more.
You think me mad? You will think so no longer. When I described the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body, the night waned, and I worked hastily, but in silence. First of all, I disemboweled the corpse. I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantling. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been too wary of that. A tub had caught all.
When I made an end of these labours, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what I had now to fear. There entered 3 men, who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbour during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what I had to fear. I bade the gentleman welcome.
The shriek I said was my own, in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I led them at length to his chamber. I showed him his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim.
The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerfully, they chatted of familiar things. But, ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. But still they sat and still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found the noise was not within my ears.
No doubt. I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a water makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently. But the noise steadily increased.
I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations. But the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But the noise steadily increased.
Oh God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting. I grated it upon the board. The sound arose over all and continued increasing. It grew louder, 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 and the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible that they heard not?
Almighty God! No! No! They heard! They suspected! They knew! They were making a mockery of my horror! This I thought, and this I think. But anything was better than this agony! Anything was more tolerable than this derision! I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. And now, again. Hark! Louder! 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 Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more! I admit the deed! Tear up the planks here! Here! It is the beating of his hideous heart!